lot of powerful men and women have made a difference in our world. A select few have been game changers. Being recognized by your peers as a true legend is reserved only for the greatest in history.
Your mother made a difference. She had that great advice which she said, remember who you are.
Yeah, every morning.
Every morning, remember.
Every morning.
Get up and look yourself in the mirror and say, I'm Kim Clark, and I come from somewhere, and I ought to respect certain values.
Yeah, every morning. She, my mother was passed away in '98, and she had a huge amount of energy and a big focus on her kids. And she used to say to me 3 things that I never forgot. First, remember who you are. She said that all the time. I mean, every time I walk out the door, she would say, Kim, remember who you are. And what she meant by that was not just remember like your name, and remember like where you come from, right. What your roots are, and who loves you, and what we hope for you. The other thing she said to me was, she said, if it's worth doing, it's worth doing well. I mean, she must have said that to me 1,000,000 times. You know, because I would be kind of doing about a half-baked job on something, and she would look at me and she would say, you're a lot better than that.
Yeah.
Well, if it's worth doing, it's worth doing well. And the last thing she would say to me also many times was, be a leader. She would say to me, you were put on this earth to do great things. Go out there, be a leader. Don't let the kids pull you around by the nose. Don't just follow the crowd. You do what you think's right, and you be a leader.
And she knew all this stuff without going to Harvard Business School.
Oh, yeah.
Your dad said one thing about ride the high road.
Ride the high country.
High country.
Ride the high country. It was his favorite saying. Yeah. It was all about dreaming big dreams.
You're not just anyone. One day, you're going to have to make a choice. You have to decide what kind of man you want to grow up to be. Whoever that man is, good character or bad, is going to change the world.
A friend of mine's father, who I went to and I told him about my idea. I said, I've got this, you know, Kevin, what are you doing after school? You gonna sell insurance? You can do this, you can do that. So actually I have this idea for a company. So, well, really, what is your idea? I said, well, I'd love to tell you about it, but I'm going through the patent attorneys right now and I haven't had anything finalized, so I can't say anything. And he's this real sort of a gruff old guy, and he kind of leaned back in his chair. You know, had his glasses, big beard, big white beard. He kind of looked like Burl Ives, kind of a look to him. Tipped his glass to the edge of his nose, reached up, you know, gave me 2 slaps in the cheek and said, hey kid, let me give you some great advice. He said, first of all, find out if your product can sell. And if it can sell, do it faster and do it better than anybody else. And if you do that, all the legal work and patents and lawyers in the world can't keep you from being successful. So we focused on that. And we said there's just a couple things that we're going to protect and we're going to defend. There's lots of companies who make lots of products that are similar to that first product, yet we still have more than a 75% market share. And it's not because there's a courtroom somewhere that says so, it's because the consumer believes. So if you have a product, you have an idea, make a prototype, find somebody to put it in their stores, ask them to give you a chance, and make sure that the thing can sell.
Everyone has told me to take on hard challenges, and I've definitely in my career taken the path sort of less traveled and taken on challenges that maybe other people might not have wanted to, and I've really enjoyed it and learned a ton. And so I would say if you're not risking failure, then you're not trying hard enough.
To chaos, so many things going wrong. And my Indian partner one day told me, I said, oh, Mr. Sawney, I can't believe all the things that are going wrong. We have so many problems, it kind of just wears me out. And he said to me, looked me right in the eye, and he said, Tom, business is problems. That's what business is. It's all problems. I've been able to take that, you know, my expectation about a business, it's really about problem solving. So when the problems really pile up, I realize this is not so much an outgrowth of my particular actions, but it's sort of endemic to doing business in general, and sorting and working your way through them is great, but always know that there's a whole new batch of them heading in your direction. So it's kind of a good leveling thought.
How does the news shape the way we see the world? Here's the world based on the way it looks, based on landmass. And here's how news shapes what Americans see. This map This map shows the number of seconds that American network and cable news organizations dedicated to news stories by country in February of 2007, just 1 year ago. Now, this was a month when North Korea agreed to dismantle its nuclear facilities. There was massive flooding in Indonesia. And in Paris, the IPCC released its study confirming man's impact on global warming. The US accounted for 79% of total news coverage. And when we take out the US and look at the remaining 21%, we see a lot of Iraq, that's that big green thing there, and little else. The combined coverage of Russia, China, and India, for example, reached just 1%. So why don't we hear more about the world? One reason is that news networks have reduced the number of their foreign bureaus by half. Aside from one-person ABC mini bureaus in Nairobi, New Delhi, and Mumbai, there are no network news bureaus in all of Africa, India, or South America, places that are home to more than 2 billion people. And this lack of global coverage is all the more disturbing when we see where people go for news. Local TV news looms large, and unfortunately only dedicates 12% of its coverage to international news. And what about the web? The most popular news sites don't do much better. Last year, Pew and the Columbia J School analyzed the 14,000 stories that appeared on Google News' front page, and they in fact covered the same 24 news events. Similarly, a study in e-content showed that much of global news from US news creators is recycled stories from the AP wire services and Reuters, and don't put things into a context that people can understand their connection to it. So, if you put it all together, this could help explain why today's college graduates, as well as less educated Americans, know less about the world than their counterparts did 20 years ago. The real question is this distorted worldview what we want for Americans in our increasingly interconnected world? I know we can do better, and can we afford not to? Thank you.
So imagine a big explosion as you climb through 3,000 feet. Imagine a plane full of smoke. Imagine an engine going clack, 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 clack. Sounds scary. Well, I had a unique seat that day. I was sitting in 1D. I was the only one who could talk to the flight attendants. So I looked at them right away, and they said, no problem. We probably hit some birds. The pilot had already turned the plane around, and we weren't that far. You could see Manhattan. 2 minutes later, 3 things happened at the same time. The pilot lines up the plane with the Hudson River. It's usually not the route. He turns off the engines. Now imagine being on a plane with no sound. And then he says 3 words, as unemotional 3 words as I've ever heard. He says, brace for impact. I didn't have to talk to the flight attendant anymore. I could see in her eyes, it was terror. Life was over. And I want to share with you 3 things I learned about myself that day. I learned that it all changes in an instant. We have this bucket list, we have these things we want to do in life, and I thought about all the people I wanted to reach out that I didn't, all the fences I wanted to mend, all the experiences I wanted to have and I never did. As I thought about that, later on I came up with a saying, which is, I collect bad wines. Because if the wine is ready and the person is there, I'm opening it. I no longer want to postpone anything in life. And that urgency, that purpose, has really changed my life. The second thing I learned that day, and this is as we clear the George Washington Bridge, which was by not a lot, I thought about wow, I really feel one real regret. I've lived a good life. In my own humanity and mistakes, I've tried to get better at everything I've tried. But in my humanity, I also allow my ego to get in. And I regretted the time I wasted in things that did not matter with people that matter. And I thought about my relationship with my wife, with my friends, with people. And after, as I reflected on that, I decided to eliminate negative energy from my life. It's not perfect. It's a lot better. I've not had a fight with my wife in 2 years. It feels great. I'm no longer trying to be right. I choose to be happy. The third thing I learned, and this is as your mental clock starts going 15, 14, 13, you can see the water coming. I'm saying, please blow up. Right? I don't want this thing to break in 20 pieces like you've seen in those documentaries. And as we're coming down, I had a sense of, wow, dying is not scary. It's almost like we've been preparing for it our whole lives. But it was very sad. I didn't want to go. I love my life. And that sadness really framed in one thought, which is, I only wish for one thing. I only wish I could see my kids grow up. About a month later, I was in a performance by my daughter, first grader, not much artistic talent, yet. And I'm bawling, I'm crying like a little kid. And it made all the sense in the world to me. I realized at that point, by connecting those two dots, that the only thing that matters in my life is being a great dad. Above all, the only goal I have in life is to be a good dad. I was given the gift of a miracle, of not dying that day. I was given another gift, which was to be able to see into the future and come back and live differently. I challenge you guys that are flying today. Imagine the same thing happens on your plane, and please don't. But imagine, and how would you change? What would you get done that you're waiting to get done because you think you'll be here forever? How would you change your relationships and the negative energy in them? And more than anything, are you being the best parent you can? Thank you.
In this long life that you continue to flourish in, what has brought you the greatest sense of satisfaction, and where is the deepest regret?
The greatest thing that makes me satisfied is to serve the people, really. It's the greatest pleasure. I don't think to rule is a pleasure. I think to serve is a pleasure. And you know, I was for 60 years in the administration of Israel, the minister there and the minister that and prime minister. I'm asking what took most of my time. The answer is handling frictions among people and institutions. When I was prime minister, I hardly heard the word yes. Now I'm a president. I don't have an administration. I don't have frictions. I hardly hear the word no. And they discovered that if people feel that you serve them, they will respond gladly. If you'll give an order, people will resent. If you ask them to volunteer, you'll be surprised how many of them will volunteer for everything. So the greatest satisfaction is to discover the goodwill and trust